The Trump administration is facing criticism for a series of controversial actions, from imposing tariffs to using wartime powers to speed up deportations and deploying federal troops in American cities. We begin with this report from CGTN's Jim Spellman.
U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration are pushing the limits of executive power in unprecedented ways. Federal agents and National Guard troops are patrolling the streets of Washington, D.C., raising concerns about federal overreach, and the administration plans to target Chicago next, aiming to use a U.S. military base in the area to stage immigration enforcement actions.
It's illegal, unconstitutional. Frankly, it's un-American to send troops into American cities when there's no emergency, there's no insurrection.
The administration is threatening to deport Kilmar Abrego Garcia to Uganda. The Salvadoran citizen entered the U.S. illegally more than a decade ago and was sent to a prison in El Salvador in what the U.S. government admitted was a mistake, and later returned to the U.S. Now, the government says it will deport him to Africa if he doesn't agree to plead guilty to human smuggling charges dating back to 2022.
The government is far more interested in throwing around their weight and demonstrating what they think is their power to do whatever they want, whenever they want, to whoever they want.
The White House has fired the head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, a Trump appointee, after she disagreed with Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. over vaccine policy.
This is unprecedented. There has never been a CDC director fired. And it appears that she was fired for standing up for saying things that are true and refusing to rubber stamp things that are putting ideology into the recommendations of what vaccines our kids should get.
And as he pushes for lower interest rates, Trump is attempting to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook over allegations she made false statements on a mortgage application. She is suing to keep her job.
He has the cause that he needs to fire this individual. He laid it out in the letter that he provided to her and to the public as well. And so we'll continue to fight this battle.
The Federal Reserve has traditionally been separated from White House politics, and in the Fed's 111-year history, no governor has ever been fired. And Trump has cut Secret Service protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris, who he defeated in last year's election. VPs traditionally only receive 6 months of protection once out of office, but former President Joe Biden had extended that an extra year. Trump defends his actions, arguing bold moves are required to take on serious issues and that he is getting results that help the American people. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
To discuss the latest on U.S. politics, let's bring in our panel. Here in our studio, Douglas Sloan is principal at the National Capital Strategy Group. Here in Washington, D.C., Adolfo Franco is an attorney and Republican strategist. Also with us, Joseph Williams is former senior editor for U.S. News and World Report. And from Concord in New Hampshire, Daniel Pai is assistant professor of law at the University of New Hampshire. Welcome to all of you. Adolfo, let me start with you and this ruling by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit here in Washington, D.C. It has ruled that President Trump went too far in his use of emergency powers to rewrite U.S. trade policy. This is in reference to the tariffs that he's imposed on dozens of countries around the world. It said that the president overstepped his authority under a 1977 law known as the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. What is the implication of this ruling?
Oh, the implication is it goes to the Supreme Court, and we'll have the Supreme Court decide what this ultimately means. What is true is that the use of the tariffs in this fashion is unprecedented. But President Trump ran an agenda to say he was going to take unprecedented action in this and other fields that we're going to speak to later in this program, and in a sense push the power of the president to its max ability. And that is something that will be decided by the courts. The way the tariff laws are written in the United States, and I worked on these trade agreements years ago, is there is usually a specificity that is required for the type of tariff or the conditions. And what is probably going to be at issue for the administration is defending across the board, for example, 10% tariffs at a minimum across the board, rather than targeted tariffs with countries which we have geopolitical issues or security issues and things of that sort. So the Supreme Court will ultimately decide how far-reaching that presidential authority is. That's unsettled, and it's unsettled for this reason. It's never been used in this fashion. So in that way, it will be a precedent setting It could be to support the president fully, but at a minimum, many of the tariffs that he has imposed will be upheld ultimately by the Supreme Court.
Right, for now, the tariffs will stay in place at least until October 14th, according to this court ruling, which gives the administration a chance to appeal to the higher court. Daniel Pye, great to have you with us. Welcome to the show. I don't want to get too far into the legal process, but is an appeal now by the administration to the United States Supreme Court automatic? Is that something that's definitely going to happen?
Oh, I think that's almost certainly going to happen. Part of Trump's strategy, or the Trump administration's strategy, seems to be simply to do things and then to litigate them later. And they are trying to test they're trying to test the institutional independence of the court. At this point, the composition of the court has changed quite a bit. Many of the members are Trump appointees, and they have shown remarkable deference to the Trump administration. And so in many cases, what they're betting on is that there's going to be continued deference and that they will get favorable rulings and quite different interpretations of the limits of executive power than the court has previously held.
Douglas Sloan, notwithstanding the details, the legal details of this ruling, what are the political implications?
Well, politically, Trump could face a lot of these problems come midterm election. These tariffs are hitting people in the pocketbook, and it's not just people on the coast. It's hitting his constituency in Middle America and in red states. These farmers, middle-class people, hardworking people, working-class people are all suffering at the hands of these tariffs. The United States has lost, I think, beef exports, pork exports, soybean exports have all gone towards China, and you know, that's just the beginning. That's just a tip of the tariff iceberg here. So with losing all this business, this is really hitting Americans in the pocketbook, and the only way that Americans can respond is at the ballot box in the midterm elections. So we will see middle America, working class America, right, from red states respond come the midterm elections, and then everything should be sorted out then.
Joseph Williams, what do you make of this strategy that Trump is using? It's something that Daniel just alluded to, which is to do something and then test the limits of his power, and then test the limits of presidential power, pushing this all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, where, as Daniel pointed out, we've seen deference to the president.
Well, something keeps working, you keep doing it, basically. I mean, we've seen this movie before a couple of times. We've seen it on deportations. We've seen it on firings. We've seen it on other matters that the Trump administration has considered audacious enough to do, and the court seems to back him up. It's all a remarkable strategy about the expansion of the executive power, and I think Douglas is right. I think the midterms is going to tell a particular tale. That's one of the reasons why Trump was pushing for 5 more seats in Texas, and that got all this redistricting arms race started, because he knows that these policies are unpopular. He knows that the court is viewing a very narrow, viewing the law very narrowly in his favor, and that the public doesn't really like this. And I think that if the election does not go his way, he's going to face a lot of challenges. So I think that the court is of the last resort for the Trump administration, but he is going to face a reckoning in November. The question is whether or not that reckoning will be absolutely without taint determined that the American people will have their say, or if it's just going to be another kind of rigged or gerrymandered to bolster the president and what he's doing to continue these unpopular policies.
Daniel, this is just one issue that we're talking about, but the president has signed dozens of executive orders since taking office. There have been questions about the legality of some of those actions. He sent federal forces into cities, fired a member of the Federal Reserve Board, deported people without due process, and slashed budgets which have been funded by the United States Congress. When we look at this court decision, for instance, is this how the system of checks and balances is exercised? Is it working?
Well, it's not working. The idea is that that the framers of the Constitution had when they designed the institution of American government was that the federal government is to be divided into three coordinate branches that each check each other, and so that it's a rock, paper, and scissors game, so that no one branch wields too much power. And formally, that system is well designed, and it's served us well for a couple centuries. The problem is that Trump is exploiting a loophole that the executive is empowered to act quickly. The framers had in mind that the executive would be energetic and would respond to crises very quickly. Congress moves slowly and deliberatively, and of course the courts are meant to get the right answers, and so they can take years to decide a case. And the consequence of this is that the president has realized that if he simply moves quickly enough, then he can do whatever he likes, whether it's legal or illegal. It's indifferently, he can do whatever he likes, and it's just going to take years for the court to catch up to him to tell him whether or not it was in fact legal or illegal.
Right. Joseph Williams, let's look at the deployment of National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. I mean, it's something that's been talked about for a very long time. It's a move to combat crime in the city, according to the president. But if we look at some of the polling, in a recent poll, 46% were against the deployment, 38% in favor, and 16% unsure. But when we look at the numbers, according to party lines, 76% of Republicans support the measure, while 80% of Democrats are opposed to it. How do you interpret these numbers?
Well, once again, not really a surprise here, mainly because partisanship has become so rigid and so calcified that it's difficult to come to consensus about anything, let alone the facts. I mean, the facts are pretty clear here. Crime in D.C. has gone down. The National Guard is normally called in to patrol the streets under extraordinary circumstances. Americans as a whole, generally speaking, do not like the presence of troops on streets where officers normally deploy. And having deployed the federal government and using the muscle of the federal government to put troops on the streets sends a message. And that message is that I am in control, speaking it from the White House, we're in control. We get to do this. We're going to get to do this. And to the previous point, try and stop us, and it will take years. I mean, there hasn't been very much litigation on this just yet, but even so, it will take a long time. And in the meantime, the damage is already done. The visuals are already established, and there is an opening for him to do this in other places. We saw it in Los Angeles, the same thing, where they filed suit, and those court cases are only now starting to get decided in a true fashion. So it's the opening pages of the authoritarian playbook. We've seen it around the world. Now we're seeing it here.
Douglas Sloan, some of these actions by the president, they sort of throw up some very unpredictable political outcomes. I mean, looking at this deployment here in Washington, D.C., I mean, you live in the D.C. area, what we commonly refer to as the DMV. The mayor of Washington, Muriel Bowser, she's a Democrat, and she was initially against the deployment of these National Guard troops, but is now praising it. Let's listen to her.
The difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge and last year represents a 87% reduction in carjackings.
So, Douglas, has President Trump done something right here?
No, I don't believe that President Trump is doing something right. These soldiers, these U.S. National Guard are normally, or not normally, are controlled by state governors. Because of the unique situation of the District of Columbia, he is able to call them in and have them patrol the streets here. He would be in violation of the U.S. Constitution if he tries this in another city. And in regards to what Mayor Bowser said, I would push back on that a bit. These National Guardsmen are not trained police. The National Guardsmen are trained to engage with foreign combatants. When you call down the National Guard, normally it's a domestic rebellion, it's a foreign invasion, or you are having issues enforcing the law. None of that has been the case here. So Trump is bringing the National Guard, again, when you are operating outside of their designed purpose. And that is never a good thing. If Muriel wanted more police on the streets, then she should have gone on a hiring spree a long time ago and brought more police in. And she could even divide them up. We'll have some police that are going to handle domestic issues and other police that are strictly going to be with crime. There are ways that you could get around this issue. There are ways that you could deal with crime within our cities, within our urban areas, where you are not federalizing the U.S. military to patrol the streets, and the first, which is looking like to be a first step of an authoritarian regime. So I'm pushing back on the mayor on this. No, this is not a good thing. You may like the outcome, but I will argue that you can achieve these outcomes without violating the U.S. Constitution, which is ideally what you would want to do.
Adolfo Franco, one of President Trump's senior aides, Stephen Miller, he went on Fox News to explain the deployment of troops. Let's listen to him.
Look, if your streets are more violent, as these Democrat cities are, more violent than Baghdad, more violent than communities in Ethiopia, more dangerous than Mexico City, Democrat cities are more dangerous than Mexico City, which is run by criminal cartels. How can you pursue happiness?
So, Adolfo, I think Stephen Miller actually said it there. He referred to Democrat cities. The president has now set his sights on Chicago, a city that is not even in the top 10 violent cities in the United States, according to the FBI. The cities that he's talking about are all Democrat cities. The most dangerous cities are in red states like Ohio and Tennessee. Has this issue become too politicized? I mean, why not send troops to those states?
Well, certainly the president has said he's willing to send troops wherever anybody wants and requests them. But large cities like Chicago, large cities like he's already sent them, Douglas, as you know, to Los Angeles, and that was upheld by the courts. Certainly has the right in the capital of the United States to send them. I live here in this area. I wouldn't be comfortable outside your studio at 11 o'clock at night, but I am now. The facts and the statistics speak for themselves, and that's why the mayor has reacted the way she's reacted. We haven't had a homicide in Washington, D.C. in over 2.5 weeks, or over 2 weeks. Previous to that, we had 6 in 1 week. Carjackings are down 89%. People are feeling safer. These aren't, the only people who have to fear the National Guard are criminals, and obviously they're fearing them. So it actually is working. I would be welcoming them in Ohio or any place else where there's a crime problem. There's no question about that. But there are major cities, and I don't think it's necessarily Democrat or Republican, but most of the large cities in the United States are run by Democrat mayors, and I think that was the reference, and that would be a very positive thing. But I don't know. This show tends to project the bubble in Washington, D.C. 54% of the American people supports the president's crime initiative. 54% at this time. 89% of the American people say crime in major cities is a major and significant problem. And these same people that are now talking like Douglas about police recruitment were the people that were trying to defund the police 3 or 4 years ago and attack the police. Now they're talking about police recruitment. So I think these are welcome additions, and they've in many ways hollowed police forces around the world because of the nonsense 5 years ago. So this is the problem. The other thing is this midterm nonsense. Just quickly on this, Douglas was referring to. Just have to tell you quickly. Most, except for 4 times since 1946, the party in power always loses seats in the midterm. So this is not because of the Trump agenda. I think he's going to defy it this year, but not because of gerrymandering in Texas. There's plenty of gerrymandering. It's taking place in Illinois, Maryland, and Massachusetts, where there is not one Republican seat, and in California.
Okay.
Very quickly, if I could just address what Adolfo said.
Okay,
if I could just
one moment. Douglas, go ahead very briefly, please.
I never was in favor of defunding the police. I don't know where you got that from. Don't attest that to me. I think that is a very silly slogan, and I am not in favor of defunding the police. I never said that, so you don't need to put that on me. Number one. Number two, I think we've been down, Adolfo, if you just allow me to finish, we've been down this road before where I think we placed a bet on this very show. I said, hey, we're going to do very well in the midterms. You said, no, it's going to be a red wave. What happened? You came back weeks later. You said, I have to give Douglas credit because he was right.
Okay.
It was not a red wave. The Democrats gained seats. Again, even this far out, I predict the Democrats will gain seats both in the House and in Senate.
On this same program,
I need to move on. Gentlemen, I need to move on. I want to get to Daniel. Daniel, there is something of a debate going on right now, as we can hear, about the president's power, the limits of his power, and when it comes into the possible abuse of power, the New York Times makes the case that it is not President Trump's fault that this has happening, that this debate is taking place. But the Constitution, vague constitutional wording, this particular reference was to Article 2, the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. I mean, the article points out that any president can interpret that as he or she wants to. Is that a fair point?
Well, no, the president does not get to interpret the Constitution. I mean, the foundational case of all constitutional law is Marbury v. Madison, and it holds that the interpreter of the Constitution is the courts. However, the language of the vesting clause in Article 2 is problematic. It does vest the executive power in a president of the United States. And we have to contrast that with the vesting clause in Article 1, which says that the legislative powers herein granted are vested in a Congress. And the words herein granted are not present in the vesting clause of Article 2. And the implication there is that the powers of the presidency aren't limited to just what's listed in Article 2. And so that does create a kind of expansive executive. And there are multiple competing theories of executive power. Yeah, and the multiple competing powers of theories of executive power either assign complete power to the plenary power to the president as the executive, whereas others see it as an as a whole branch of government, and that various cabinet officials and directors also share in the executive power. And so it depends on what theory the court happens to buy, and different courts at different times have bought different theories of what the balance of powers is between the executive and the rest of the federal government.
Yes,
Williams,
may I add something quickly to that? Because I think that was very well stated. But there are 2 points in American history where presidential power was expanded significantly. In 1860, in Civil War, and in 1932 with FDR. In the post-World War II period, the courts have deferred more to executive power. And it's the consequence of a modern society. I think this is going to be the third era with Donald Trump of an expanded executive. And it's because Congress is largely polarized.
I'm running out of time. I need to get to Joseph Williams to talk a little bit about the politics of what is going on right now. And Joseph, I'm wondering if President Trump has placed Democrats in an invidious position right now, especially on the issue of crime. This is what he said recently. Let's listen.
As you all know, Chicago's a killing field right now, and they don't acknowledge it. I think the Democrats better get smart, and, politically, I hope they don't, but actually, in terms of love for the country, I hope they do, because it would be good to work together.
So, Joseph, I mean, so if Democrats support him, it's a tacit admission then that they're not doing a good job on crime. If they oppose him, then they'll be portrayed as being soft on crime. Which way do they move?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why you saw Muriel Bowser do what she did. I mean, she's not necessarily wholeheartedly, full-throated backing the president, but she is trying to attempt a bit of triangulation, if you will. She's trying to signal that, yes, crime is difficult in many, many big cities. And we don't have enough time on this program to describe exactly why that is, and exactly why we've failed so many times as a nation to get a grip on crime, and a lot of it has to do with economics. But I think that the second problem you have here is that you don't have any significant pushback from the Republican Party, especially those Republicans who claim that they are constitutionalists, who claim that there are clear separations of power, that claim that troops in the middle of a nation's streets are not what this country is about. We don't have any people on the right standing up to say that, even though ostensibly that is what they say, that is what they claim to believe. So I think this is a conundrum that's kind of a false equivalency happening, and kind of a narrative that the Republicans have been able to take advantage of for decades, mainly because if you're making, explaining, then you've already lost the argument. Crime is nuanced. Crime is not ironclad. Adolfo has lived in D.C. for 5 years or longer than that. If crime was so terrible, I would argue that he might have left by now. But certainly there are certain people who are more susceptible to crime than others. And again, that relates back to poverty. It relates to redlining. It relates to a whole host of other issues that we as a country have abjectly refused to solve.
Okay, Douglas, let's look at the national polling numbers, national approval numbers. Now, there's multiple polls that reflect a president who is, his support is falling among the American people. His approval rating has slipped to 38%. Most disagree with him on his tariff policies, his treatment of the federal workforce, and the DOGE cuts. He's also losing support among young people as well as what's referred to sometimes as soft core Republicans. Well, so far so good, but there is a but in this, and that but is the Democrats are not reaping the benefit of that unpopularity. In fact, Democrats are losing ground to Republicans in every one of the 30 states that track voter registration by party. How are Democrats going to change that?
Well, the Democrats need to get onto a wartime footing here. To quote one of my favorite movies, The Godfather, the Don needs a wartime consigliere. So the Democrats are going to have to take a page out of the Republican playbook and start playing for keeps, start attacking Republicans. This is a target-rich environment regarding these tariffs, regarding all the negative approval ratings of Trump, regarding how all these people in middle America, farmers and working class, hard-working Americans in middle America, red states are suffering right now. They're not able to feed their families. They're not able to meet their quotas. They're not able to keep their farms. They're losing their farms. Democrats have to take those talking points back to their districts and let people know, hey, nothing. This is not the result of President Biden. This did not happen under a Biden regime. This is all Trump. So you need to vote blue, no matter who, all the way down the line so we can get back into Congress, majority in Congress, and get back into the White House and fix this mess that Trump made. And that's the bottom line.
Adolfo, very quickly, I've only got 40 seconds. There is one Democrat who's making some headway. He's getting some traction. That's Gavin Newsom. And he's doing that by mimicking some of the tactics that Donald Trump does, especially on social media posts. He's been making these posts using all caps and things like that. What do you make of that?
Well, you can't. Donald Trump is authentic. Newsom is a fraud, and the American people see it for what it is. You can't imitate Donald Trump. Yeah. But whether it's Newsom or Eric Swalwell or others, is they see the Trump success. Yeah. And I know this is a painful for my friends. Yeah. But the fact is this: Democrats are losing in terms of registrations dramatically, and their approval rating is much lower than the president. And the Democrat number of Congress is the lowest in history.
Okay, I have to leave it there. We have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington.